Hello there. So if anyone has any questions, you can ask me about the coding that I started, the coding course, and I'll try to answer. So, hello, welcome. So if anyone has any questions from the, well, let's do this. Let me actually play the video, and if anyone has any questions at any point, I can. I am 3D modeler working on a mobile video game. Are you open to collaborate for coding? Send me more details about what you're trying to do for the game on Discord, and we'll see. What do we have? So any questions about the video? So I'm trying out this, like, if after I make a video, if there's any questions. I'm gonna turn on the video, so if you have any questions, you can ask. This course is to get you started with coding. If you've never played Minesweeper before, you can Google Minesweeper and familiarize yourself with the game so that you have a better understanding of what game we're creating here. The reason why I chose Minesweeper is because it has a simple UI, so we can focus more on coding in this course instead of how the game looks, but we always can go fancy with the looks after we build the game. So let's get started. I'm going to be using Unity Game Engine to create this game, so if you don't have it installed, go ahead and install it, and we'll start from there. The version that I'm going to be using is 2021.1. It's going to be a 2D game, and I'll name my project Minesweeper. A clean project is created for us, and currently our scene is empty. So let's go to Hierarchy and right-click to create a UI element, and the element is going to be an image. In the hierarchy, you can see when we created this image, we also have canvas that was created and an event system. The canvas was created because image is a UI element, and all of the UI elements need to be inside of a canvas to be displayed. This image is going to be our cell, so we'll rename it accordingly. And I'll switch from the scene view that we currently see right here to the game view so we can see better how our UI looks. In this cell, we want to display the number. So let's go and add a UI element inside the cell. And we can do that by right-clicking on cell, go to UI, text. To change to how the text looks, we can go. So anyone has any questions about the video so far? I mean, it's just Unity editor right now, but we'll get to coding in just a little bit. Clicking the option for stretching in horizontal and vertical, and that will stretch our text. Now for the text appearance, for text, let's write 1 instead here. Switch the font size to 50, and let's center it in the middle for both alignments, horizontal and vertical. So that's how our text is going to look like. And now let's go back to our hierarchy. And for our cell, let's add another UI. And this one is going to be an image. And for this image, I want to change the color from white to something gray. So we can do that in the inspector, image color, and switch it to gray. One more thing that I want to change in the inspector is also stretch to fit the parent. So holding Alt down, click on the stretch. Now the idea here for this cell is when you click on the image, we'll disable image and it will display our number that is underneath. So that's the start for UI setup, and let's start with what you guys were waiting for, some coding. So go ahead and select the cell, and our logic for our cell is going to go under here. And the way that we're going to add the code is by clicking add component. And right here, we can write the name of the script. So we'll call it cell, create new, create and add. You can see that a C# file was created. And also you can see the script in our inspector. Now we can double click on the file and that will open up the editor. I'm using Visual Studio Editor, and there's a link in the description of a video if you need help setting up Visual Studio. After you have Visual Studio set up, we can continue on. To start with coding, we need to look at some basics. The first basic thing that we're going to look at is variables. You have already used it in math. So if you used y equals x plus 2, those y and x are called variables. And the idea is the same in programming. But one assumption that we do in math is that y and x are numbers. But in programming, we need to specify what type is it. One of the number types that we have in programming are integers. To add a type to our variable, we can say int and then specify x. After that, we can say so let me pause the video for a little bit. Okay, so we got a question. What do you do for a living? So I'm actually a software engineer, so I do coding for a living. Okay, now what is .NET? .NET is the framework. So basically a collection of all the different libraries that are available for the C# language that you can use so that you don't have to start writing everything from scratch. So currently using the mono behavior, which is what these start and update our methods are from. So mono behavior is actually the one that is calling the start and update methods. Well, sort of like that. The mono behavior actually requires you to have a start and update method, but the start update method can be called from somewhere else actually. So yeah, then .NET is a framework, basically collection of libraries and classes that you can use to create your program or code. So let's continue on. What that x is equal to, for instance, let's say it equals to 2. And integers are whole numbers, so 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. But if you want to use decimals, there's several options that we can use in coding, but a float type is mostly used in Unity Engine, so we're just going to use that. And when we assign a float, let's say to y, then we need to also add f after the decimal to specify that we're setting a float type. One more basic type that is commonly used is a string. So let's create a variable text. And to set the value for string, we need to put our value in double quotes. And always after we complete the initialization, we need to include the semicolon, just like I did for the other variables. That way we tell the compiler that we're done with that assignment and it can So SmartPinker, please teach us full C# for Unity. So that's the idea of this course. Well, the short course is to get started with this full C# for Unity. And there is, I mean, I didn't cover that much in this video, but the video is 10 minutes long, so I'm trying to make sure that they don't go too long, that you can actually watch the video and like rewatch it multiple times so you can get the basics before we can continue on. So, and since I'm going to be making the Minesweeper in this short course, there is going to be also use of arrays. So we're going to use arrays here, variables. So you'll see how to work with arrays, which is very, very useful to create those to create games, because you can store a lot more. I guess you can make your life much easier if you use arrays than just creating multiple variables. But then there's also dictionaries. I'm not sure if we're going to use dictionaries yet in this course, but if there's going to be a use for it, we're going to look at that as well. So I'm going to cover the methods in a little bit. So I think in a minute I'm going to transition to the methods, but I'll be doing more on methods in the next part. So that next part, we're actually going to try to create our own custom method, and I'll explain what each part of that method is. So that's where the course is heading. So for the next part, I am new to Unity. Is better to use Bolt or coding? So it is, if you can actually learn, and I'm pretty sure anyone can actually learn coding. Coding would be actually better, because there's much more of a maintenance control that you can do, like maintain your code and break it up, and a whole bunch of different approaches they can go with to keep your code clean and also make it reusable, so you can reuse it between the projects. You can do the same thing with Bolt, but there are limitations in Bolt, and if you actually start using Bolt more often, you'll see that when you begin a project, it seems like, okay, Bolt seems like it's even faster or something like that, but once your project gets bigger, you'll see that you're going to be putting a lot of time into trying to maintain those visual scripts and stuff like that. So it's going to start to look like spaghetti. Of course, you can have spaghetti code as well, so your code that's going to be going all over the place, and that's why the design patterns exist, so that you can follow those patterns to make more of a standardized approach to coding. But yeah, if you just compare Bolt or coding, not looking at the learn curve or all of that, then yes, coding is better to go with. But then again, if you understand coding, you can always use Bolt for some parts of your game. For instance, if you want to visually see the state machine, how your game is progressing and stuff like that, you can always add Bolt on top of your coding. But yeah, there is no limit that you have to use one or the other. For some parts, for instance, like even when I was doing the multiplayer, you have to use coding because the multiplayer libraries are actually not exposing some functions to Bolt that you can actually use. So usually that's when you start dealing with I forget what's just lost it. When you're dealing with attributes and stuff like that. Hi, remember me? Can you please explain about the navigation AI bit need for it for my first bracelet? Okay, so navigation AI. That's a pretty big topic of navigation AI. So I did. I'm not sure you're using Bolt or actually C#. I don't have a tutorial about C#, but you can take a look at the Bolt tutorial that I did for AI. So just on my channel, just search for AI, and I think there's only one video that has AI, and it's basically the turkey I did for Thanksgiving. That's finding corn. Now that one is very simple. Like again, like AI can be very it's not really, I don't know if you can consider AI, but it just scans for food, and if it sees food, then it walks into that direction. I don't even remember if I implemented the angle of view in that one, but that is a basic start for an AI, and you can expand on that. Depends on what you want your AI to do. So if you just want to have a field of range where the AI can see, and if he sees, then he follows you until he gets to a certain point and then starts attacking, then yeah, that's pretty simple. But if you want more complicated, like trying to find the shortest path, avoiding obstacles and stuff like that, then yes, that will require, on top of that, you'll have to add some pathfinding and stuff like that. Okay, so I think that's all the questions. Let's continue with the video then. Continue to the next line. Now, if you need to store a true or false value, for that we can actually use a bool, which is a boolean. Let's create another variable, is here, and you can set it to true or false. So these are 4 basic types that are commonly used in coding, but there are lots more types of variables that we can create. And in Unity, one type that is used a lot is a game object. And a game object is any of these objects inside of our hierarchy. So we can use the game object type and create a variable. Let's call it image. Now for this image, I actually want sorry about that. So I wanted to put in a couple words for this one. So I'm using game object, and I said it's a type. So it is a type of a variable, but the game object is also a class. So right here at the top we have a class, and I'll get to that point also in the course. But if someone wants to get a head start, then I guess I can explain it a little bit here. So game object is actually a class, and the class, I mean, it's made up of variables that can be inside here, which can be I guess attributes of that class, and then also methods, and methods are basically actions that class can take. So the game object is a class, so just make sure that you know that, and you can see that difference between these two. So the lowercase types, there are the basic ones, so there are like available with C# standard and by default, and then the game object ones are the ones that actually are added. So this one is specifically added by the Unity engine. So the game object actually exists in the Unity engine namespace. So, and I will also cover that in the course, but and just trying to grasp as little as possible so that you can get first bit first, and then we can add on top of that and go to the bigger picture. So starting with variables, we're going to go to methods. Next part, I'll be doing even more on methods. Then we're going to take a look at classes. And after we look at the classes, then we can look at namespaces and stuff like that. So let's continue on. Well, one of the ways that we can do that is by making this variable public. You can make it public by typing public in front of this game object. Save the file by clicking Ctrl S. And in Unity, if you make a variable public, it will be available in the editor. So right here, if I select my cell, under our cell script, now we can see one parameter, and it's called image, and that is the variable that we just made public. To connect the image, we can simply just drag this image from the hierarchy and drop it for a parameter. And Unity will connect that variable so that it will be available for us to use in this code. Now, if we want our code to do something, we need to run some functions or methods. And by default in Unity, there are two default methods that are created for us. So this void start, which is going to be run before the first frame update. And then we have update, which is going to be run once per frame. So if we want our code to do something, we need to write that code inside of the curly brackets of a method. And for a simple test, let's try to deactivate our image on start. So in start, we can use the image variable. To access the options that we have for this variable, we can put a dot, and that brings up a list of all of the options that we have for this image variable. If you look at this list, one of the options that we have is set active. You can also start typing active. It's going to filter out all the options that you have that has active in it. So the one that I want to use is set active. So double click on that. And now if you put your mouse over this set active, you can see a short description of what set active is. Set active is actually a method, and it's looking for a Boolean variable, a true or false. So if we want to disable the image, we can pass in false, and that should disable our image. So in parentheses, let's put false as the value and put semicolon at the end of the line. Save the file by clicking Ctrl S. Now if we go back to Unity and click play, as soon as the game starts, you can see that the image game object was set in active. It's grayed out in the hierarchy, and we can see the number now. Now, one more useful method I'm going to show here is debug log. So let's find the debug class, and on this class, we can add a period, and under here, we can look for a log method. And this log method is expecting a variable of a type object. And if you see a type object, that means it can accept any type of an object. So we can pass an X here if we want, which is a type of int. And we can also do some math operations here. So we can say X plus Y, and it's going to log the result of this math operation. Also, we can print out a string. So let's say U. And if you want to add another string to it, for instance, the text that we have here, we can pass the text variable and add a plus sign. This will concatenate the string, and it's going to write that in a single line. Now let's click save, and I'll show you where you can find those results. Once you go back to Unity and click play, at the bottom right here, we have console. So if you click on the console, you can see those messages being printed out. So there is the 2, our value for X, and then 3.5, which is the result of X plus Y. And the last one is the concatenated string, hi U. So you can experiment with this debug log method. So yeah, the debug log method, it's very useful when you're trying to actually debug. That's why it's part of the debug class. And if you want to see some value, or if you want to see if your code gets to that point and it works as you expect, you can just throw a debug log line there and put your message there, or see what value of the variable do you have there. So it's also always useful to when you're actually debugging. And also, the other use for it is if you haven't included like functionality just yet. So for instance, if you if you created a function, a new method or something, and you didn't put the code for it yet because you're still developing it, then you can just throw a debug log there saying that this function needs to be implemented or something like that, and then whenever the method is called, then basically it's going to throw that debug message saying that it actually got called. So you might have noticed that I'm switching between function and methods, and there is a difference in the meaning between them, but at this point I think you should just treat them the same. So function or methods, just sometimes some languages like JavaScript actually calls them all functions, but other languages like C# and Java, they call them methods. But in C# you can also call them like functions, but the functionality is a little bit different. So, but I don't think I'm going to be covering it in this course, the difference between those two. How to start random spawn in BuildBox. You're gonna have to well, you can use a random node and connect different spawns, but otherwise you're gonna have to actually write some code. Yeah, with the BuildBox, if you want to do custom stuff, either you have to do a lot of visuals, I guess nodes, to try to copy paste them together and get some sort of random, otherwise you're gonna have to write some code. Not a lot of visual support as much as Bolt has there, but Bolt doesn't have I guess the higher level ones. I think they're working on them, but I'm not sure where they're going to be available. Can you talk about raycast for a select an object and then something happens? A raycast for select an object. Can you talk about raycast for select an object and then something happens? If you could clarify what you mean, because I'm kind of not really clear what you want. So actually, like raycasting in the code, writing a C# raycast, and then see if the object collides with it, and then do something with it. So, like I mentioned in that video, that next part, what we're going to look at is actually getting a click event on this image, and then actually, instead of disabling that image on start, we're going to actually create a method that's going to be actually removing it on click. There's a whole bunch of different ways you can do that, but the way that I'm going to do it is to help you guys learn coding and stuff like that. So that's the first thing. Okay, but raycasts, yeah, so I'm not sure what about the raycasts. I do have, if you're using Bolt, I do have tutorials on raycast and how to select an object using raycast. I mean, it's exactly the same in C#. Does adding the class script to a game object instance SL class? Does adding the class script game object instance? Kind of not clear what does adding the class script to a game object instance a cell class. So I'll try to understand what that means, but basically this is the game object, and if you add this class the cell script here, it adds so all of these are actually components. So it adds another component to this game object. So the game object holds all these components, and how it looks in script. So this is a class, and it handles that the functionality of the component. So when you add that component, you just added the functionality, this functionality to your game object. So whatever you're doing here, that game object will listen for it. So if there's any interactions that you do with cells from other part of your game, then it will actually work as well. I guess that's what the question was about. But yeah, you can always I have not shown this, but you can always for instance, this mono behavior actually has the game object. So game object variable is the variable that that this class is actually owned by. So if you do game object, that means it's going to pull up the game object that has the component, which is cell, in our case, the game object cell. And basically in here, you can actually get component and can specify which component you want to get. So in here we have image component, and then we have a canvas render and a rectangular transform. So you can actually pull those up. Image, the image actually exists in another namespace, and again, this is some things that I have not covered yet in the course. Well, not UI. Is it UI? Okay, yeah, it is. This is something that I haven't covered yet, namespaces and stuff like that. So we'll cover that, but basically this actually retrieves the image component, and on this image component, some of the attributes we have that are available are source image, color, and material. So you can actually look for those. So we can look for color and change the color from here if you want and stuff like that. So that's how you get the component, and the cell is also one of the component. So from any other class, or we can actually get the cell component and do things on it. So for instance, our cell component has the image, public image variable, this one right here, and we can actually get access through this line of code. Okay, yes, for example, when we select an object, something happens. Is it a good idea to use raycast to identify if the object being selected or touched on immobile? So a raycast is just a physics test that you do. So if your game actually has a box collider, then you can use raycast to determine if you touch something. The reason, so there are different ways you can trigger a raycast, and to actually run the raycast, you actually need to get an input. So the input is what actually is probably what you're talking about, and if you use a mouse click and get the position of the mouse, it will also work on the touch on mobile devices. Now the input mouse will work both on PC, so on computer when you're testing the game, and on the mobile device, touched mobile device. Now if you want to use multi-touch, then you actually have to start using the touch system, the touch library or classes to get that. But if your game is just gonna have only a single touch, you're not supporting multi-touch, then you are fine with using mouse input, and if it works on the computer, it's gonna work on the mobile device as well. The reason why I'm saying that you actually need an input is because the raycast, one of the parameters that you need to pass in for the raycast is a position of where you're shooting the ray from. And usually you need to convert your screen space to a world space to determine from what direction you're trying to shoot and stuff like that. Shoot that ray. Now, but I have to mention that there are ways you can do detect a touch without using a raycast, and it's actually using the event system. So we have I think it's on mouse. Let's see. I'm just not, I don't remember where it is at. Okay. On mouse. So yes, so in modern behavior, we can actually let's take a quick look here. So inside modern behavior, it's actually extending behavior, probably not implemented directly here. So let's go into behavior, component. I'm trying to find trying to find the events that are available here. I guess I can't really find them like that. Okay, so but in the modern behavior, there's some options that you have here. So on trigger, no, you can use another one called void. So there's on click. I think it's on click. Let's see. Oh, okay, so there we go. So on mouse down, on mouse drag, on mouse enter, on mouse exit, on mouse over, on mouse up. So you can use these options right here. But I thought there was actually on click as well. Click. What did I do? Okay, I messed something up. Anyway, so if you can just use on mouse down, you can use that. So on mouse down, so whenever the mouse gets pressed, you can actually do an event, this event right here, and that will actually whenever you actually click on that item, is going to trigger this. And it is using raycast, so you don't have to set up the whole raycast thing in your thing in your game to actually trigger this event. So that's the easiest route. So if you want to, so one reason why you would use a raycast in this case, if you're just trying to click on an object, is if you want to limit how far from the in the world you can actually detect this click. So on mouse down, it's actually it can detect it from, like, I guess, infinite distance. So if your object is millions of units away, it can still detect it if you actually will be able to manage to hit it. So yeah, but this is an option that exists, and this one again, it uses the same approach as raycasting. Okay, so how to generate levels randomly. So with this okay, how do you add WSD movement using Bolt? Okay, so if those tutorials, if you want to see generating levels randomly and how to do WSD movement using Bolt, I have those tutorials, so you can look at getting started. Let me see if I can find a playlist name for it. So that was the Unity Bolt tutorials, and in that one you can find both the level generation and using WSD to move around. So take a look at that. I'll actually post a link here if you want to, but yeah, I have the both tutorials available right there. That's the playlist, and then it has the random generation of the level, which I generate the trees. You can just switch around what you want to generate between the levels. Okay, thanks for all the tutorials on Trigger. Yes, so on Trigger is a little bit different. That's if you're actually colliding with Box Collider, so it's an interaction between physics objects. So it's a little bit different than the on-click event, on mouse down event. Okay, so what else? We have how to add ads in Buildbox. Yeah, there's just a there's a video that I have. Just search for ads on my channel and you'll get the video on how to add ads. Thanks for a lot for explanation. Okay, I hope that helps. Okay, I think that's all the questions, unless someone else has any more questions. I'm actually I'm gonna actually try doing this live stream thing for the whole course. So after I post a part, I'll give it a little bit of time so people can watch it, and then we can do a live stream and answer some questions, and I can actually expand on some of the topics that I covered in the part. Yeah, creating GTA 5 in 2 hours, unless you have all the art imported and configured, that's not possible. Because yeah, most of the time, if you're trying to create GTA 5, it's going to be actually creating all those art assets and configuring them so you can actually use them in the game. Okay, so I meant like this way, so that every game object doesn't contain a class def file. So construct file game cell game new cell x. Class cell constructor file game cell cell. So you mean by file game cell cell? I mean like this way, so that every game object doesn't contain a class. Class cell constructor file. So you mean actually just having a class that you can use, and then yeah, I'm not. You mean just having a class that is not actually not a mono behavior? So just having a class that has the functionality of all of. So just a plain class. So actually, I want to have mono behavior. You can actually take this approach and having just a class separate from all of the code, but I actually want to have mono behavior because this class is actually me interacting, is going to be the class that can be controlling the cell game objects. So I'm not going to have like a master that's going to control all cells. Each cell is going to control itself, and from the cells, they're going to trigger like update what's going on with the game and stuff like that. So you'll see that a little bit later, the reason behind this. But yeah, you can create just a plain class and have all of the attributes and actions inside there. But I actually I'm planning to use the mono behavior of this thing. And in fact, in the next part, we're actually going to be using Mono Behavior to do all this stuff. Okay, so usually live streams on Saturday. You usually do live streams on Saturday, so I would wonder if there will be one tomorrow. So I have not made up my mind if I'm going to do a live stream tomorrow or not, but just keep a lookout for the notifications about live streams. I usually try to post schedule it ahead of time. That way I can do it. That way I'll let you guys know, like, that I'll do a live stream next or not. We are actually need in this because Bolt is not the best in big projects and GTA is just a joke. Yeah. Yes, so I mean, you can still use Bolt for big projects, but like I said, I think it's you have more options in coding in terms of organizing your code and breaking it up so in a ways that it's going to keep it clean and stuff. And yeah, some things like in visual scripting, for instance, math operations like x+1, that's just 3 keystrokes in code, but in Bolt that's actually 3 units that you need to add. So there is lots of benefits in using code instead. But visual scripting is visual, so if you need to see something visually to understand, like I think like one of the good ones is the state machine, then yeah, like if you actually need to visually to see it, then it can help. But I mean, doesn't mean that you can't do it inside of Bolt. You just have to use like a switch or something like that to make it easier. Okay, I think that is it. I'll give it another 2 minutes. If there's no gonna be questions, then I'll be ending the stream. Again, thanks very much guys for all the questions. We actually got good questions, and I hope I answered all of the ones and didn't miss any. Let me look at them again. Yeah, I think I got all the questions answered. So be on the lookout for the next part. I'm gonna try to get this this course out as fast as I can. I do have other things that are going on, but for this channel, I'm just going to be focusing on this course right now, nothing else. So everything else is on pause. We're going to get the course out, and then we can think about what we're going to do next. Can you tell Buildbox visual scripting? Can I what? Okay, I'm not sure what you mean by can you tell Buildbox visual scripting. Okay, so that's it. Okay, have a great day or great night, whatever you are, and I'll see you next time.